I'm going to give you the names of each of these young teachers. Some less young than others, but it happens. And I'm going to give you the city where they're working in. And the reason I'm going to do it that way is that it's hard at this moment, thinking back some 25 years, to identify an American city with a sufficiently functional public school system. And by sufficiently functional, I mean a school system that does at least minimally competent work with most of its students. Now, public schools have gotten a bad rap for a good while, sometimes unfairly. For instance, the New York City school system, for all of my adult life, and I'm now 67 years of age, has been quite fine. Doesn't mean all the schools in it were fine, but many, many were. If you look at a city like Washington, D.C., where I also have worked, and I've worked in a number of these cities, Chicago, L.A., not so. Philadelphia, one of the worst. Baltimore, a sad story. Now, the correlations here you want to keep clear about. The correlations almost always to issues of race and sometimes class. That is, if you were black or Latino, your chances of getting a decent education in most American cities was not great. I would argue it's still not all that great. It's better, perhaps. So these are people who've chosen to work, in most cases, in cities which have had very troubled histories. My own first experience in public schools was in Boston, and then from Boston, New York, and from New York, Chicago, and from Chicago to L.A. But that's still a small sample of cities. My own children went to Washington, D.C. public schools, for which I was accused by a colleague here of sacrificing my children to my politics. I was deeply pleased by the fact that when they came back to the Amherst public schools, they tested 5 grades ahead of all their peers. So much for bad urban education, right? Very plain school, physically bad, not a great playground, no gymnasium, and you can make a long list of all the things we were missing. Every teacher in the school was African American, and it was one of the best schools I've ever seen. But very traditional in the way it worked. My son cried every day for 2 months when he went off to school and accused me of being a mean father, which I was. And eventually, let's start with bio, because you're at the very end. Bio Owolewa is in Boston, which is where he's also from. Dale Henry is not in Texas, and I take it, Dale, you are originally from Texas, right?
No, I'm from Virginia.
From Virginia. I kept to remember. Dale's in L.A., right?
Yep.
And Martina, Meijer, you want to show them your hand?
We're skipping this.
Yep.
Right. I know I haven't forgotten
Okay.
at all. Is in New York City, right? In Brooklyn.
Bronx.
In the Bronx. Oh, you're the one. You're in my grandchildren's neighborhood. Nicole Martí, over here. Nicole is New York as well?
Yes, New York City.
That's right, because you're in Queens.
Yes.
Next to her is Michael Somerville, who is in D.C., very, very interesting school. Emmalie Dropkin, next to me, is in Baltimore, and that is Nancy Hawa, who is also in Brooklyn. Right? So we have 2 people in New York, 1 Baltimore, 1 D.C., 3, 1 Baltimore, 1 L.A., 1 Boston, 1 D.C. The first question I'm going to put to the panel, but I want you to break in soon here with things that you're interested in knowing. There are 2 questions which in a way are almost the inevitable first 2 questions you ask public school teachers. One is, what keeps you going, or what sustains you? And what really drives you crazy, repeatedly? Not just occasionally, but in a repeated way. So in a way it's asking, depending on how you answer the questions, how do you overcome the various adversities of public education? Another way of putting it is how do all the great pleasures along the great hard work of teaching, what qualifies the pleasure? And you can choose to play that out however you would like. And we can begin anywhere. Michael, you're the senior.